obsolete toaster, I repeated. Sprinkle's smart, she said, and cackled a long, hearty laugh. Her laugh triggered a bout of echolalia. The more she laughed, the more Killicky laughed, the more I laughed, and, you know, we were just all laughing. A precocious 3-year-old can be mighty clever and hazard endless guesses and do some abstract thinking, even if she isn't potty trained. But a starling? Let me tell you, it's hilarious when the house cat passes her cage to hear Sprinkle call out mischievously, "Here, kitty, 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 kitty." As I've now been informed by people in starling-friendly households, and as you can imagine, they are all over YouTube, because anyone who has a starling who talks, you know, photographs it. Starlings are the grammarians, as I say, of the bird world, and they can do all kinds of interesting embedded clauses even. So instead of echoing 1 or 2 words, they like rhythmic phrases and whole sentences, and often include nonverbal sounds too, like sneezing or the owner's wheeziness or cough. It's hard to know which words might catch a starling's fancy. Sprinkle of late, for example, has taken to calling girls Barbies because she's heard this on TV. Human language, being as suggestive as it is, when Sprinkle gives a phrase different inflections, it can sound insightful. So when she says, "I'll say good morning," that's one thing, but it has a different effect if she clips it to, "I'll say." Sprinkle's sentences mutate, and she often engages in what we would call simple conversation. I heard Killicky say to her about the pet goldfish, "All goldfish are beautiful. Are all starlings beautiful?" And Sprinkle said, "I'm pretty." Killicky said, "Sprinkle has a beautiful beak. I don't have a beak." Sprinkle said, "You can borrow my beak." Killicky sometimes logs Sprinkle's chatter, which includes such surprises as, "Allow me to take control," and "You are said to be bald and armless. That's unusual." One day when Killicky's husband called upstairs, "What are you doing?" and Killicky answered, "Brushing my teeth," the starling chimed in, "Not invasive surgery." I presumed that she heard that on House MD. On a January morning, Killicky opened her blinds to find a spotlight sun blasting over the sill and pouring buckets of yellow marbles through the grass. "Isn't it beautiful?" she sighed. To which Sprinkle replied, "Oy vey, it's beautiful." I don't know what Sprinkle makes of the dawn, only that it wakes her up every single morning, even indoors, because starlings instinctively disperse from their night roost at sunrise. And I wonder if she feels a tugging to join the circling flock silhouetted against the sun. Despite her conversational gifts and how chatty starlings are, they usually don't generalize from patterns the way we do, which leaves us alone to invent false teeth and explore other planets and write books. You may be familiar with my previous book, The Zookeeper's Wife, and wondering if Dawn Light seemed like the natural follow-up to me. And the answer is yes, because the same sensibility haunts each of these books. One reason that I chose to write Zookeeper's Wife is that I found in Antonina a kindred spirit, especially when it came to her relationship with animals and her love of animals, her fascination with their senses and behavior and their sensibilities, and also the many behaviors that they share with humans, and all the ways in which we humans really are animals, whether we like to acknowledge it or not. She savored the details of everyday life, even in the midst of great hardship, and found the world an exciting place to be, full of stories, mysteries, and surprises, and suffering too, which she tried to ease whenever she could. But ultimately, even that was part of the improbable adventure of being alive. And that reminds me of something that Amelia Earhart said once. She crashed a plane, and unfortunately for her, she was so well known that she couldn't even land a plane without there being a complete crowd of reporters waiting for her. But she crashed this one, staggered out of it, bruised but alive, and they asked her about the crash, and she smiled, and all she said was, It's all part of the adventure. What makes dawn such a significant time of day for me? Because dawn is part of the great parentheses of our lives, a symbol of rebirth and insight when the deepest avenues of life and matter become visible. Each day when I wake, I'm surprised and excited to be here again. Imagine, I think, you live on a planet in space. There's another chance to start over, another chance to see the world with all its peoples and wonders as if for the first time. This sort of waking doesn't have to happen in the morning, of course. There can be waking moments anytime and anywhere, but the actual dawn of the day is a natural wonder that's glorious to behold, celebrated by many cultures and chock full of strangeness and drama. But I could have chosen, really, any time of day. As a naturalist, I try to see both the forest and the trees. I love learning something new. I poke around a lot. I like a bit of adventure, and I try to leave lots of time and room for wonder. My mom was the same. By peering at nature up close, I find it's possible to gain a little more perspective on life in general. But like Monet, all I really do is pay attention. In my career, I've had the luck of going to some astonishing landscapes in pursuit of the marvelous, from the Amazon to the Antarctic. But fortunately, the marvelous is a weed species. It grows everywhere, in backyards and in ditches, and even on the lips of lobsters. I read not too long ago about a life form that only lives on lobsters' lips, and I thought, do lobsters have lips? But apparently they do, and there is this wonderful life form, Symbion Pandora, that lives there, and only there. I know people who have made extraordinary discoveries of antibiotics and other things virtually in their backyards in upstate New York. The familiar is so familiar to us, something I was saying earlier, that we tend not to notice it anymore. And that's part of the reason that at one point I decided, when I had a broken foot that wouldn't heal for a couple of years, and I just couldn't get out, I decided to capture all the squirrels in the backyard and anesthetize them with the help of a Cornell vet, give them jewelry so I could tell who they were. The boys got blue beads, the girls got pink beads. And National Geographic funded this as a gray squirrel project because gray squirrels were just so familiar that nobody thought to sit down and really study them. They provided all the nuts. They said it was the cheapest project they had ever funded. The squirrels had never seen Brazil nuts, not in my backyard, so they were pretty excited, and they would stand there weighing them, you know, like greengrocers and stuff. And I learned so much in the process of doing that and just looking at something familiar. Fortunately, as I say, the marvelous is a weed species. It grows everywhere. Sometimes we need to be taught how and where to find it, but it's always there, waiting and full of magic. The chapters in Dawn Light were written in gusts of reverie at dawn, and they belong to my quirky genre, whatever it is, that I call a natural history, in which I get to explore and celebrate something from many different perspectives, human perspectives, planetary perspectives, life and death perspectives. And so some of the things that I stopped to think about, write about, were the 17 Japanese words for rain, and a few of the 100 names for rain in Hawaii, the position of cranes in many cultures, including in the Himalayan kingdom of Bhutan, where they're honored as reincarnated beings, why the World Health Organization labeled night shift work carcinogen. This is really fascinating, I think. They looked at a satellite atlas of where the brightest places at night on Earth were, and they overlaid a map of where the highest incidence of breast cancer was, and they discovered that it all matched up. And then they started looking a little farther and found there wasn't just breast cancer, but there was higher incidence of cancers near the greatest sources of artificial light, and also among populations of people who are only exposed to artificial light because they are night workers.